right, guys. So today I have Tim Trainor, who works for Woop. What's your official title?
So program manager, community and affiliate.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So Tim and I got connected when we were looking for Kana Fitness to become an affiliate of Woop, and I'll explain that towards the end of how that works. But basically, I've heard about Woop for years. I've known several people that have used Woop, and more than a few months ago, I got my own, and I'm loving the data from it. So I wanted to bring Tim on to basically use this to explain what Woop is, explain why some of you might want to use it in your daily life, and what you can do with the data to improve your lifestyle. So Tim, why don't you maybe just give a little bit of background for yourself, like where you grew up, what you did athletically, and maybe all leading to how you came to work for Woop.
Sure. Yeah. I guess, how much time do you have? No, I'm just kidding. I'd been obviously, I've been a sports person my whole life. I played my sport I played the most growing up was soccer. Played throughout high school, and then kind of stopped when you go to college and focus on other things. But I originally landed in corporate America like immediately after graduating college. I had known for a really long time, like fitness was a passion of mine, and I was like really, really interested in becoming any sort of like fitness coach. And so I dipped my toe in the water there as I was working in corporate America right after I was done college. And opportunity presented itself for me to coach full time. So I was actually able to coach full time at a strength conditioning facility for, I want to say 5 years or so, 5 or 6 years. And I continue to do that now. But I got really heavily involved in competing in CrossFit, made it to regionals a few times on a team, 2 separate teams. And my husband now, actually, he went to the games with the Back Bay team in 2015.
Oh, cool.
I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, because you're up in Boston area.
We're in Boston. Yeah. Yep. And that's where Woop HQ is too. So Woop HQ is right next to Fenway Park. Nobody's really there right now, but that's where we're located.
Right.
But we're all working from home. As you can see, I'm in the spare bedroom of our house. But yeah, I mean, Woop was a product that I was introduced to in late 2016, which is actually when Woop went to market. And it was, CrossFit was just like the biggest, coolest thing at the time, and got on Woop, was on it for about a year and a half. And I ended up coaching one of the VPs. I ended up coaching one of her family members, and we were just chatting about Woop. I was talking about my experience and what I do for work and all of that stuff, and it ultimately landed me a position of being able to get hired at Woop. And so I've been here June of 2019. June 2019 is when I started.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So Woop, from what I understand, was founded by Will Ahmed. And it was all because he was at Harvard playing squash, and it sounded like he was curious about his own performance. So can you talk a little bit about kind of that origin story of like, obviously you can't speak for Will, but
right.
I'm sure you're steeped well enough in how basically Woop came about.
Yeah.
Because at the time, from what I understand, Fitbit was just coming up and becoming huge. But Woop seemed to go a very different direction than a lot of these other trackers, namely step trackers. So maybe talk about the origin story of Woop itself, and then also how it differentiates itself from some of these other trackers out there.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, I can't speak for Will, but I do have a little bit of an understanding of how exactly it all went down. So like you said, Will Ahmed, our founder and CEO from Harvard University, was a big squash player. Originally, so from what I understand about how Woop kind of got off the ground was I think in sports in general, there tends to be this like go mentality, push through everything. pushing through is always better. And I think what Will was really, really trying to get across to everybody is, recovery is important, and making sure that, maybe pulling back and taking a more like holistic, high level view of like every piece of what's going on in your training and your sport, and not necessarily overtraining a lot, right? Overtraining a lot leads to burnout, leads to injury, leads to a lot of negative things. And if you're able to focus on not burning out and not overtraining, and if you're on Woop now, not being in the red all the time, that leads to just a more successful career in literally whatever capacity career means for you. It doesn't necessarily mean sport for everybody. It could mean being a mom or a dad. It could mean being a corporate America employee. It could mean being a teacher. Like all of these things require us to be better performing individuals, better performing humans, right? And so the cool thing about Woop is that it can be relatable to all facets of life. I think I get this question a lot, actually, in relation to Fitbit, but also like the Apple Watch, right? Like, why should I buy a Whoop? Why should I get a Whoop when, I could do something like an Apple Watch, or I have an Apple Watch, or I have a Fitbit? Like, why do I need to switch? So I think they're two very different things. And actually, we did put out a Locker post recently about why Whoop does not count steps, and I think that's important, right? So like, at the end of the day, you walked or moved around a certain amount, right? And that's great. Movement is medicine, right? Like just moving your body, like we're supposed to be active people. But at the end of the day, how does tracking steps determine how healthy you are, right? Or how well you're going to perform as a human, right? I think that's something like important to understand. Whoop is basically a coach that you can wear that'll help you determine how your behaviors are trending positively or negatively in literally all aspects of your life, in stress and anxiety, in sleep, in recovery, in cardiovascular load, like all of those things. They're all intertwined in your central nervous system, and they all play a factor in how you are performing as a human. So I think that kind of answers the Fitbit question. In terms of Apple Watch, which I get a ton of when I talk to people externally, I mean, accuracy is one thing to talk about, right? We've been third-party validated, and all of that stuff lives on our website too. Like anybody can look it up. But I think the biggest difference between the Apple Watch and Whoop is Whoop was designed for the sole purpose of this data. Apple Watch kind of added on all the health stuff on top of their main product, which is basically the face and messaging and games and apps and things like that, right? Like Whoop is not supposed to be another distraction that you wear. It's an app that lives on your phone, and you're meant to kind of like forget about that you wore it and then only look at the app when you need to, right? It's not something that should just totally consume your life in terms of always in your face. And Apple built a great product, but in terms of like Whoop's sole purpose is to help us with strain recovery and sleep, and this data around being a better performing human, and really knowing yourself, where Apple has all these bells and whistles kind of all rolled into one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, going back to like steps, like steps for 10,000 steps for one person is going to be relative versus another person, right? Like a 10,000 steps to a ultra marathoner is nothing, right? But the way that you guys use strain is automatically creates this language around variability from person to person in terms of you could take the same amount of work, but the amount of strain it puts on a person's body is going to be different depending on who they are, their experiences, their training, and everything. Which we know that from CrossFit, because two people can do the same type of workout and
get
feel very differently.
Very different endings. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that completely makes sense. But I have to imagine that Will, especially, and then as he brought on more people onto the team, it was it went against a lot of these trackers, because a lot of these trackers measure work, right? Whereas Woop, to me, it seems like you guys are very focused on more of the recovery side of things. So, I mean, you guys do measure strain, obviously, because that's important, but it definitely plays to the bigger part of recovery and sleep, because if we're looking at strain, recovery and sleep are two out of three major factors that you guys are taking into account.
Yep.
Which makes sense, because as we know, especially from CrossFit workouts or really any intense workout, right? Even if you're working out for an hour, that's only 4% of anyone's day.
Right.
If you're sleeping for an ideal 8 hours or whatever it is for you, that's a third, right? And so this emphasis on recovery at the time in 2016, I'm sure was very against the grain, or at least unknown, versus now I think a lot of people have come around to that idea, like, hey, you can train as much as you want, but you also have to recover based on your training.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's go through those three major areas. Maybe let's talk about strain, recovery, and sleep, because each of those has their own little details. So strain is measured. You guys measure it from 0 to 21, I think, on a scale.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily linear. So Can you talk about that scale?
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. So we measure strain on a scale of 0 to 21. Exactly like you said. It's based off of the Borg scale of complete exertion. And one way that I kind of describe this as, it's based off of cardiovascular load, like how much stress are you putting on your body? And the cool thing about Woop is that it's not necessarily just external stress. Like if you have a really tough day, emotionally, anxiety, stress, like it basically, that type of day is basically you above baseline in terms of at rest, right? Like your heart is going to be elevated during that state of being. And all of those types of stressors will be picked up by Woop. So even on a day, let's say I'm running a ton of errands in between meetings. I have a few really tough conversations, at work, really stressful day. Didn't work out at all, but my Woop might tell me like, damn, like you worked really hard today. And in my head, I'm like, well, I didn't. But in the back of your mind, if you think about your day, you did. And so strain is a great correlation between those two, internal and external stress. So Woop picks up on all of that type. The nonlinear piece is really interesting. So Woop is also, and as we talk about the three different pillars, it's important to know that they're all kind of playing off of each other, right? So I say Woop is a coach for you that you can wear, right? So there's actually a strain coach built into Woop that will say, based on your recovery of, let's say 90%, that's a great recovery score. Let's say I woke up in 90% today. My strain coach is going to say, hey, based off of your 90% recovery score today, you should build to, X amount of day strain to achieve optimal performance for the day, right? So my Woop already knows, like, on an average day, how much I usually push myself and how much I usually do in terms of strain. And so it's gonna give me some metrics to hit for that day, which is really cool. So there's no guesswork. There's no waking up and being like, well, strain coach is going to give you a benchmark and you can either hit it or not hit it. It's totally fine. It's never the end all be all, but it's a great guidance and it's a great coaching tool. The nonlinear piece, again, is, the more strain you accumulate throughout the day, the harder it's going to be to accumulate a little bit more. So if we break it down from like 0 to 20, for example, and we go 0 to 5 is the easiest, 5 to 10 is going to be double as hard, 10 to 15 is going to be triple as hard, and 15 to 20 will be quadruple as hard. Meaning it's just going to take more effort to build strain on top of strain as you try to close that circle in your app. Another piece of strain is, if you and I were the same everything, like down to the same genetics and fitness level, and you and I woke up and we did the exact same day, wake up to finish, and I woke up with a 90% recovery score, really great. You woke up with a 10% recovery score, not so great. At the end of the day, my strain score is going to be a lot lower than your strain score, because when you wake up and your recovery score is really good, your body is basically telling you you're primed and ready to take on anything that's coming your way. And so it's basically saying you're going to have to work a little harder to earn those strain points, right? If you wake up in the red with a not great recovery score, like I mentioned, that 10%, your body is not ready to take on all of that strain, right? So it's gonna accumulate strain really quickly, and it's gonna say, probably a little earlier in your day, all right, you've hit your optimal for today. Like anything over this is going to be overachieving, right? So it's just it gives you that great benchmarker and referencing back to your recovery score.
Yeah, and this makes sense because from what I understand, it sounds like some of the first users of this were people like Navy SEALs, NBA players like LeBron James, and the amount of work that they're putting in far exceeds most normal people.
Right.
So there has to be a formula built in where it's not just a linear progression of just, hey, an hour of work is just automatically going to bump you up the same amount.
Right.
You have to take into account these huge ranges of experiences, but put it on a scale small enough that it could be comprehended. I mean, I guess you could have a scale of like 1,000, right? But it becomes less useful, right?
Right, exactly. And Woop is always learning. I shouldn't say learning. Well, yeah, I should say learning. The algorithm of Woop, like it never stops learning you, right? So as you change and grow as a human, right, the algorithm is going to adjust to new baselines and new day-to-day learnings, right? So the cool part about Woop is that you don't ever have to go in and say, oh, I've started a new training methodology, or I've started a new this. Like, you just got to continue doing what you're doing, and Woop will learn and adjust.
Yeah. One of our coaches notices that when he coaches, even for an hour, his strain is much higher than even some of his workouts. So I don't know if you can attribute that to anything in particular, but he notices that now, given the workouts are generally less than an hour, so that might be part of it. But one of the things that he's noticed is sometimes his strain really jumps up pretty high.
Yeah.
Even after 1 or 2 hours of coaching.
Yeah, that's actually a great call out. I love hearing that. To me, that's a great coach. That means that this person is active, is present, is giving literally all they have to that class. That's what that tells me.
That makes sense. Yeah. This is Coach Justin for you guys who are listening, and you guys know that he can be a former thespian, so he brings that acting presence to coaching. So.
Exactly. Then there you go. Yeah.
I love it. So what about weightlifters and people who do shorter workouts? I mean, you kind of alluded to it, but a lot of these trackers will track volume, right? Amount of time working, or cardiovascular output. But it seems like it's measuring more than just that. That if you do let's say for Olympic weightlifters or CrossFitters who are doing 10 to 20 minute workouts, who might feel gypped if they're wearing a Fitbit or other tracker that typically measures steps, or you could just kind of fake it by just shaking your wrist.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I think there's two pieces to that question. First one I'll address is, and this is a conversation I've specifically had a lot with people who don't necessarily do like high cardiovascular type workouts, weightlifters, Olympic weightlifters, things like that. Something that's really important to know is that, you know, when we talk about strain on the body, Whoop might not necessarily, trying to word this correctly, Whoop might not like pick up exactly necessarily how you're feeling in terms of if you're doing a 1 rep Mac back squat, right? You are working as hard as you possibly can for those, let's say 10, 12 seconds, right? Whoop obviously is going to jump and show your heart rate for those 10, 12 seconds, but it's not a long duration cardiovascular workout, right? So it's not going to give you like a 12 strain for that 12 seconds, right? It's going to give you a little blip of strain and say, wow, you worked really hard for that minimal amount of time. The important piece to know about Whoop is that your body is going to, you know, react to that training. And your data, like the data from that training, will populate basically in the next day and the following day, right? So if you're an Olympic weightlifter and you're using Whoop in this capacity, it's not so much the immediate strain that you're trying to accumulate. It's how well are you sleeping post-training and what's your recovery score the following day, right? Chances are, if you do a really heavy session or a really hard lifting session, your recovery score the next day is not going to be great, right? And so that's basically your body saying, all right, Whoop knows that you pushed hard yesterday. Maybe you didn't get a ton of necessarily strain recorded, but Whoop knows that you pushed hard because of giving you that lower recovery score and saying, all right, now today is like a taper day. You know what I mean? So that's like a really great example of why Whoop is beneficial for even that sort of training methodology.
Yeah, and that makes sense because training like that is going to hit the central nervous system way more than
100%.
something like an hour-long jog, right?
Exactly.
So we're just hitting different energy systems, which actually might be a good segue into recovery. And talking about HRV, what HRV is, how it's measured, why does it matter, especially as it relates to more typical measurements like heart rate versus heart rate variability.
Yeah. So basically our recovery algorithm takes into account 4 metrics: HRV, resting heart rate, sleep performance, and respiratory rate. HRV being like the biggest indicator of how well you recovered. So there are books, resources, like there are so many things you could get lost in the internet reading about HRV, but I'll break it down like super simple. So HRV is heart rate variability. And easiest way to explain it for me and for, you know, general population is when I was growing up, you put your hand on your chest and you feel your heartbeat, and you just, if you counted it, you just assumed that it was the same time. It was the same like timing of the beats for each heartbeat. And there's actually milliseconds of a difference, of a variance in between each heartbeat. And you want a variance. Basically, the variance in time between the heartbeats is your body telling you how well it is adapting to stress. And it brings us to I guess this segues right into like, you know, the HRV number in terms of your HRV score in the app, right? HRV is a very individualized number. It's very genetic. And it's not something that you can easily change. You can change it over time. It'll take a little time, but it's not something that's going to be like, boom, overnight. I figured it out. I unlocked something. And
there's no hack to it.
Exactly. It's just time and accountability and like just truly, truly knowing yourself. I think, you know, in my family, for instance, I'm pretty fit, you know, for 31 years old. I feel like I'm a pretty fit individual. My sister and my brother, they're both younger than me. Their HRVs are like 150, 180. So in mine hovers around like 50 on any given day, right? I go from like a 45 to like a 65. and 65 for me is like really great. But I usually hover around like 55 for an HRV score. And I think, the journal feature definitely helps us to understand, different toggles basically that we can turn on and off in terms of behavior change, to help us understand, what affects our HRV. Literally everything. And everyone's different, right? For me, I can tell you, since one thing that I've learned, one big takeaway that I can tell you that I've taken from Woop is hydration for me as an individual is very, very indicative of what my HRV score is going to be. If I go to bed and I know that I have not drank enough water in a day, I can literally tell you before I even wake up the next day that I'm going to be low yellow, high red recovery score, because that's just how my body operates. It's so individual that it's basically an science experiment for yourself to figure out for you what keeps you above baseline for your HRV score. There are so many things that come into play: stress and anxiety, hydration, nutrition, training modality, sleep, alcohol. That's a big one. Alcohol is a huge HRV suppressor. And for anybody that drinks...
Yeah, can you talk about that? Because I read listened to some interesting things on your guys' podcast about alcohol and how much it can affect people.
Oh, yeah.
And for how long.
Yeah, I mean, so literally my first week at Woop, I was fortunate enough to work really close with Kristen Holmes, our VP of Performance. And so I worked with her like every single day. And one thing that I learned from her on week 1 was she told me that alcohol can stay in your system and mess up your recovery score for up to 4 days after you've had a drink, which is like, for me, like, I was like, oh, I thought, a hangover happens and then the following day you're just like back to baseline. Like, no, like for some people, alcohol lingers for up to 4 days. And that's huge. Like if 4 days from now I have like a big presentation like that, for me, I'm thinking like, do I want to like indulge this weekend? Like I'm doing something really important on Monday. Like,
for sure.
Do I want to? So like, it's just one of those things where you have a little bit more awareness. And different alcohols affect people differently, right? You have grain alcohols, you have, vodkas, clear alcohols, beer, wine. So like, they all affect everybody differently. I can tell you that tequila for me is something that honestly really doesn't mess up my recovery score so much. Wine, IPAs, you forget about it. I have one and I wake up with a terrible recovery score the next day.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, alcohol in
general.
Are
you gluten sensitive?
Say that again?
Are you gluten sensitive?
So I don't have celiac, but we don't really eat gluten for the most part Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, like I'm not necessarily
it's whatever it goes.
I'm not really looking at it that hard, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that plays into the whole tequila thing. Although when you say wine, I mean, unless there's some sort of contamination, generally wine is gluten-free, but higher in sugar content. So
exactly. And the different
there.
additives that are in it. Yeah.
One of our coaches definitely notices when his nutrition affects his recovery score a great deal. He's still figuring out like what exactly all of that is, but he definitely notices if his recovery score is very different or has swung either way, it's generally because of his nutrition.
Yeah. And I like happiness plays a role too, right? So like sometimes like you have a stressful week, all you really want is your best friend, a glass of wine and some chocolate, right? Or something that really like makes your soul happy. Like sometimes those nights create an atmosphere for your body and like your mind to just truly just zen and relax. And then you wake up the next day and you're like 99% recovered and you're like, holy crap, like what did I do? Oh, I actually relaxed and enjoyed myself, So Woop will pick up on that too, which is amazing.
I like that a lot, because HRV is, like you said, the timing between heartbeats, and so it's going to be different. But what I'm hearing is that we like that to be higher, mostly because it's a state of readiness, right? Like if we have this elasticity in terms of being prepared for that parasympathetic or sympathetic state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that rest and digest, or that fight or flight. Then the more ready we are, the better we're off.
Yep.
So that makes sense, because maybe that one night, if you just need some wine and chocolate and just to like relax,
Mm-hmm.
that actually plays into the whole just rest and digest, just cool it, like calm down
Yep.
off a really crazy day, which I can appreciate from a nuanced sense, right? Like I think a lot of times in science, and even though, or people think science is just black and white, right? When it's mostly gray. And when we're trying to apply it to people's lives, where not everyone is the same, not everyone's living the same life, not everyone has the same genetics, not everybody has the same lifestyle. So the same stimulus can affect people differently. I appreciate the fact that Woop can recognize that even in its algorithm. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sleep. So a lot of people would think that, going to sleep at 10 o'clock and waking up at 6 a.m. is 8 hours of sleep.
Exactly.
And so, hey, I got 8 hours of sleep, I should feel great. But you guys think that's the wrong way to look at it. And so you break it down into even deeper stages. So let's, or pun intended, but let's talk about that.
Yeah. I think apart from the alcohol piece of like findings in your like first whatever week or few weeks on Woop, I think like within like the first 3 days, a new Woop user realizes how little they actually are sleeping, which is kind of alarming, right? Like you said, you go to bed and you set your alarm for 8 hours, you wake up every day, and you could be 40 years old and that could be like your normal routine, and you could be 40 years old and put a Woop on and realize you're only sleeping for 6 hours a night, which is crazy. Like you're missing out on 2 hours that you're in bed for. What's happening? Or how can you get better at that, right? So Woop does a phenomenal job at breaking down your entire sleep cycle, basically when you fall asleep to when you wake up. And Woop is tracking all of those different stages. It's tracking how many times you were disturbed. It's tracking how long you were awake for. It's tracking how much light sleep you had, how much REM sleep you had, and how much slow wave sleep or deep sleep you had. So I just plugged all the different stages of sleep, so now we can kind of walk through them. So awake is just that. It's when you're actually awake. You've come out of actually being, into a sleep cycle. The first stage of sleep is light sleep, right? So you come in and out of light sleep throughout the night. But ideally, you don't want to have more than half of your entire night be dedicated to light sleep, right? Because light sleep, nothing is really happening other than your body is at rest. It just means that your heart rate has gone past a certain threshold of knowing that it's fallen into a sleep cycle. But nothing really happens there in terms of like muscle gains or memory or anything like that. The next stage is REM sleep, so rapid eye movement. And for a lot of people, they know rapid eye movement as when dreams occur, which is accurate. Dreams occur during rapid eye movement. It's also when memory is stored. It's also when like whatever happened during that day is downloaded into your brain, basically. That's what happens during REM sleep. And then slow wave sleep, deep sleep, that's for a lot of people in fitness, that's the money maker. That's where gains are made. That's where muscles recover. That's where, everything is rebuilt in terms of muscle. And human growth hormone, I believe the number is like 90 to 95%. Like in terms of when human growth hormone is created and dispersed to the body, it is during that stage of sleep. That's when that actually happens for, the biggest percentage of when that happens for humans. So in terms of, getting better at that stuff, Man, we've put out a lot of content on this specifically. We've made sleep playbooks. Kristen Holmes actually made one that's really amazing. But something that I learned from working at Woop is, over the last 2 years, I've done, and these are all things that like you can track in the Woop journal, by the way. Blue light blocking glasses, like after dinner time. We're all glued to a screen at all times. Unfortunately, that's just how everyone kind of operates now. And even if you're not on your phone, if you're watching TV before bed, there's blue light on your TV. So a good thing to consider is, if you're going to be in front of blue light, you should put some filter in front of your eyeballs so your body knows to start winding down to get ready for bed. So you're not wired when your head hits the pillow. So blue light blocking glasses is key. I think, timing food not too close to bedtime is also important. Hydration throughout the day is important. Two things that were surprising to me that I didn't know were so important for, and obviously these are all individual to the person, but things that were important for me to change were ambient light in my room. So things like an alarm clock. If you have an alarm clock next to your bed, if you think about what happens when you fall asleep, your eyes behind your eyelids adjust to like total darkness, right? So in the middle of the night when your eyes are like fully adjusted to total darkness, it's your pupils are going to pick up on that tiny little ambient light across the room. And it's going to cause your body to wake up, to feel out like, oh, what's happening? So like instinctually as humans, we do wake up in periods of the night to just like show our brain and our body is aware of our surroundings. It's just like an instinctual thing that we do. So ambient light in the room, getting rid of all of it.
I read even, sorry for interrupting. I read even a study where they put a flashlight on someone's leg, so it wasn't even near their eyes, but something in the skin picked up the fact that there was a light source and it disturbed sleep. So light matters a ton.
Light matters a ton. Temperature in your room matters a ton. You want it colder rather than hotter, believe it or not. Colder is better for sleeping. I think the sweet spot is like 62, 64 degrees or something like that. Like for a lot of people, that's cold. But it's better for the body. And, like blackout curtains, right? I think that helps for ambient light and, falling asleep and not having those types of disturbances. Obviously, like
consistency also seems to matter a lot, right?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say too. Having a consistent wake and bedtime. Our bodies love routine. And if we stick to that, it'll know basically day in and day out, okay, now it's time to wind down. And Woop has the data and the graphs to show you all of those things over time.
Yeah, I think I had listened to a podcast where Kristen was explaining even someone who is getting, let's say, 6 hours in bed, so not necessarily 6 hours of sleep, but 6 hours in bed, but as long as they were consistent with their bedtime, going to sleep and waking up, that was actually better than someone in bed for 8 hours. Not saying this is the rule, but just in whatever you guys looked at, it was apparently a case where it was better to actually be more consistent. Because it just made the body more efficient. Because it sounds like what you guys are really measuring is how efficient we are with our sleep, right? Because maybe someone is in bed for 6 hours and actually gets, 5 to 6 hours of real sleep. One of the things I was blown away by was how much I'm awake, or what, stage-wise is awake. Because when I think of awake, I think of being awake and aware of, my surroundings. But when I look at the Woop data, it's telling me, like I just looked at it right now, I was awake for an hour and 20 minutes last night. Now, my 5-year-old was up at one point, and so I had to put him back to bed, but that was only a couple minutes. And so without Woop, I would have said, yeah, I was awake. I was awake for, 10 minutes, and then I went back to sleep. But it said I was apparently awake for an hour, 20 minutes, which is just mind-blowing, because, if you think you're getting even 8 hours of sleep, because that's how long you're in bed, just taking off that time from that awake stage is amazing. It also seems like, in terms of the two important stages, the slow wave sleep and the REM sleep, that they're like the yin and the yang, or at least they cross paths in terms of when they occur. And so in other words, like when you first fall asleep, that's most likely when slow wave sleep will happen, which I think is why you guys recommend naps, especially for athletes, because if you get an hour and a half, 2-hour nap, you can actually hit another, wave of slow wave sleep in that nap. Not necessarily REM, but get that human growth homework going.
Yeah.
And then the case for a long time in bed is that REM appears later in the night, or when you're when you're sleeping for a longer period of time. So people who are looking to be sharp academically, intellectually, whatever, that's even more of a reason to get longer periods of sleep.
Yeah, I mean, to your point,
is that accurate?
Yeah, it is accurate. Yeah, I mean, in terms of when slow wave sleep and REM sleep hit, it's obviously a cycle, right? So you're never in one stage for too long a period of time before you switch out the cycle. But I mean, exactly that. Yes, I mean, you could dip down from a nap in an hour into a little bit of deep sleep and like actually get the benefit of that. It really just depends on kind of like your sleep habits and how well you are sleeping in terms of that nap. I know for me specifically, I don't often dip down into deep sleep when I nap. Mostly because when I nap, it's like on the couch and there's a million things going on, so I'm never really asleep. But what Woop helped me understand is that the nap that I was taking really wasn't super beneficial. It was mostly me just waking up more tired, and now I understand why. So yeah, but no, you're exactly right.
Got it. Cool. So anything that you want to add? I mean, it can go so deep with all these, but is there anything that you want to add for either strain, recovery, or sleep, because a lot of our folks, again, are hearing about this for maybe the first time when they're listening to this. So I kind of want to just stay, somewhat basic. But
high level. Yeah. I think, I kind of said this at the beginning when we were first kicking this off, but, I think for a lot of people, they think, Whoop and other fitness trackers are built, for high capacity athletes. And in this case, Whoop is not. I mean, it is, but Whoop is for everyone, right? It's literally built for any capacity of human that literally just wants to be a better performer in whatever capacity their life is. And there are certain pieces of the app that you might never really be interested in, and that's okay. The purpose of Whoop is for you to figure out where are the parts of your life that you need to improve on, and Whoop will help you call them out and then continue to push you in the positive direction.
Yeah, it gives you data, and I like the idea of a coach, right? Because we're obviously very big on coaching within our space, as you know. But the idea that, hey, not only here's this data, but this is also how to approach things. So I really like the graphs and the coaching aspect of, hey, here's your recovery, and we're gonna plot this, and here's your ideal strain, so that you can still do stuff, but if your recovery is in the yellow, maybe you come in for a workout, and we're going to treat it more like an active recovery day, which when we have our people in our classes, we always, well, first of all, we have 6 different versions of the workout that they can choose from. That's awesome. So, maybe someone's a purple belt usually, but their recovery is in the yellow. And so we're like, hey, look, you're going to do either blue or even orange, because today you just need to move. But if you want to perform well the day after today or whatever, maybe today we're going to take it, relatively easy.
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. And then obviously sleep, all of us can probably admit that we can get better sleep. So to
100%.
make, to create better awareness around that is obviously helpful.
Yeah.
Now you guys just announced a partnership with CrossFit and CrossFit Games. So do you want to talk about that a little bit and what that, could mean for Woop, for CrossFit, for, just the ecosystem?
Yeah. I think it gives us an ability to grow even more within the CrossFit community across basically all facets of what that means, right? Having a bigger presence at the games, being able to, really touch and work with facilities just like yours in a bigger capacity. I think this is just the beginning of where Woop kind of stands in the CrossFit community. It'll be really exciting to see what we do this year for sure.
Yeah, pretty exciting stuff. And for those of you guys who've never seen one, I'm on video. I actually have my battery pack on because I have to charge mine. But one of the things I was most impressed by as I was unpackaging this was just the aesthetics, because, if you're trying to, market something to both men and women and have it be something where you're not even needing to look at it, but they have to wear it 24/7. I mean, this thing needs to be sleek. It has to be, something where it's not going to be distracting, right? And particularly something like the battery pack where you don't even have to take it off to charge it. To me, that was one of the coolest things. Maybe I'm just getting old, but it was one of those like, hey, these guys have clearly thought about how people should be using this, and the fact that it should be aesthetically pleasing, obviously functional, and long lasting, because it sounds like you guys also have things like a hydro sleeve for swimming. It is waterproof, but you have special sleeves where if you don't want it on your wrist, you can have it on your upper arm.
Yep.
A sleeve just for swimming. Like, you guys have definitely made it accessible for people, which is awesome.
Yeah. I'm looking at like a million different colors on my desk right now. There's so many different accessories that you can play around with. It's great.
So if someone was interested in Woop, now for us, we do have an affiliate site, join.woop.com/Kanna, Kanna. But what does, this is not something that they're just going to buy once and have forever, in the sense of, a more typical wearable, because of the technology behind it. A subscription service makes more sense for you guys. Yeah. So can you give us a range of like what that might look like price wise for people, just so they have an idea?
Yeah. So actually, let me pull up so I'm not messing up your pricing structure.
Or even ballpark.
Yeah, no, I have it right here. Basically, in terms of what you're paying for, right? The when you sign up for a Woop membership, the device is free, right? We send you the device, and you're paying for the analytics and the actual like profile within our app. Right. So when you join Woop, you basically have three options. You can choose the month-to-month membership, which is the highest price point of $30 per month. Or you could go the 12 or the 18-month membership, which is a prorated cost. So you're paying for the entire length of that term up front. So 12-month membership is like $260 for the year at full cost, not the price that you guys have. And then the 18-month membership is a little under $300. And so with the Kanna discount, your members can take $30 off of any of those pricing structures. So it's a significant discount for all three memberships, really.
Yeah. So guys, if you're listening to this and you are interested in Woop, go to join.woop.com/Kanna. And not only, let's say you do choose the 18-month membership, already built in is the price reduction because you're committing to a longer time period. Right. But in addition to that, you will also get money off. So it can come down to, mid-teens in terms of dollars per month. So when I think about it, it's like, hey, what's a return on investment, right? Whenever I'm going to pay for something, I want to know ROI.
Right.
And it's like, hey, if this gets me to sleep better, if it gets me to eat better, if it gets me to train more smart, then the ROI in that is even immeasurable, but in the sense of like, I feel better, I am performing better, which obviously makes me a better business owner, a better husband, a better father, which are all good things. And I'm more than willing to pay the, anywhere from $16 to $30 a month to do that, right?
Exactly. I think one thing to call out and kind of piggyback off of that is, quite literally our Know Yourself campaign. You know a lot about a lot, but how much do you know about yourself? And Woop will help you unlock that.
Love that.
Yeah.
Super cool. So if people wanted to follow Woop, or even you, Tim, where could they go? What should they be looking up?
Yeah. You can follow us on Instagram, Woop. Just search Woop. You'll find us. I'm
WHOOP.
WHOOP. Yep. If you want to follow me, by all means, go for it. I'm probably not as cool, but Tim_Trainor on Instagram.
Look, if you're wearing a backwards hat, you're automatically cool. Plus,
honestly, I'll let my hair down. I'm growing out my hair right now in quarantine, so I had to wear a hat for this. I couldn't
love it.
Couldn't not.
Have you heard of nominal determinism?
I have not.
So nominal determinism is when your name matches up with what you do. So you're a trainer.
I am.
You're a coach, right? So and your name is Tim Trainor. So it's like John Fisher who loves fishing.
Yeah.
It's like your name has determined what you do. So nominal determinism.
Yeah, my autocorrect in my phone hates when I try to use the word trainer in the capacity of a gym rather than my last name.
I love it. The last question that I always ask people is, what's on your personal bucket list? So before you kick the bucket, what are some things you want to get done in your life? Either this could be travel, this could be experience, it could be anything.
I would love to experience. I'm a big travel guy. I love to travel. So one of my bucket list items is going to Greece with my family. Would love to go to Greece. It's just a place that I've always loved to explore. And I would love to road trip all the national parks in the United States.
Very cool.
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah, most of those are out west. So yeah, that would make for a good road trip.
I would also love to be able to back squat 500 pounds and run a mile in less than 5 minutes, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, what's his face just did that, right?
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name, but he trains with Ben Smith.
Adam Klink.
Yeah. Klink. Yep, exactly. And he was he's a former soccer player as well. So
yeah. So I got something.
You have the experience of doing it.
There you go. Yeah. I got something
going for you.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Guys, again, if you're interested in Woop, follow him on Instagram. And again, if you're interested in helping us as an affiliate, but also getting even more of a discount, go to join.woop.com/Kana, and we'll post that in the show notes as well. All right, Tim, thanks a lot for your time.
Absolutely. This was great.